Hello, and welcome everybody to this shortened version of me designing and quickly rendering a racecraft design. I'm going here to focus on design aesthetics, dynamic sketching, facing your design with clarity after I do the rough block out, as you can see me doing here. And then after that, we'll be doing a quick render, not for the purpose of making it necessarily a pretty picture, but more to show off the materials, show off the color, and bring this piece to kind of a next level sketch, so to speak. My tutorials basically always have been line drawing or design or thumbnails. What I'm focusing here on is just quantity versus quality concept, where I focus on all aspects at the same time. I do a quick sketch, I do a line drawing that is not super over detailed, and I do a quick render. Now, my goal was here to fit in the 2.5 hour time frame. Line drawings tend to take a long while, and so it is a very nice training to find the balance in where do I actually need the detail, where do I actually need to focus on defining the shapes, and where can I loosen up some bits. So overall, yeah, very clean design. I'm not trying to overcomplicate things. I'm trying to keep the aesthetics a part of this design. It's a racecraft. The function is to only gain speed, and it's like used in competitions, like your Formula race cars, and they do have like this aesthetic of being sporty. So the design is not only focusing on necessarily function, but also how it feels and how it looks like. That's why, for example, sports cars like a Ferrari or Lamborghini, they don't only design the way so it is according to the function, but also to the aesthetics, right? There's a nice sleek shape to it. Of course, the main reason is to keep it aerodynamic, but there is a design language difference, for example, between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini, right? In my opinion, I think the Ferrari is more aesthetic and more elegant with its shape design, whereas the Lamborghini is more aggressive, more angular, more towards the raw speed feeling. And that is something that I want to achieve here by actually introducing a completely different form factor for a racecraft. Every time we think of a racing vehicle, we think, well, of a car, 4 wheels, a hood in the front, spoiler at the back, windshield in the middle of the body. And based on that form factor, you can make plenty of designs. But what if the future we have some kind of, hovering racecrafts with another type of engine? And I'll be talking about that and more, and my detailed thinking behind in my class. And of course, this tutorial is also available on my Gumroad page, which is an extended 2-hour version. Now, this will be only 30 minutes. And I will, of course, cover things from what I'm doing here, and also talk a little bit about why I decided to actually do this the way I'm doing it. Because one way is to just show somebody how to draw like I'm doing here, and and that's it. It's like having a pro soccer player just showing you how he plays soccer. In the end, you will not have the same skill as him by looking only how he plays soccer. So my goal is here to kind of like introduce you and to share my thinking process, what I'm thinking of when I'm actually designing, right? Because concept artists are usually being mistaken by, oh, he makes drawings for video games. What you're actually doing, you only perhaps use the drawing as a tool to showcase your ideas. Now, the showcasing idea part is your actual job, right? That is the actual thing that we are being paid for. Nobody will hire us to draw a nice car that already exists. It might be a job for a true artist or an illustrator or a fine artist. We are really here to introduce new shapes, new ideas, for the real entertainment, for the new real industrial design, for product design, for entertainment design, like videos and for video games and movies. And now, like here, I'm like pretending really that this design is, every time I design something like that, I give myself a function. I roughly know, at least roughly know, what the function of the vehicle will be. Based on that, I make shapes, but they all have a function behind it. Everything you make, everything you see in nature, most of the time, maybe not always, but most of the time, it really has a reason behind a certain form. And I have a logical proof for that. Look at, for example, organisms like birds, crabs, different kind of mammals. They all have shapes, and they all have different shapes, but they all have shapes that are logically followed up by another shape, right? You look, for example, at a wing of a bird, and you see the feathers are being distributed into a logical form. That is the design thinking. Nature is, in my opinion, the best designer. We concept artists just can look at it, study it, and based on that, we make our own interpretations of reality, be it making our own versions of plants or translating the feeling of, for example, a certain flora or fauna object and translating that even into a hardware piece, right? You can even make airplanes that are really heavily inspired by the look, feeling, and the shape of an aircraft. Doesn't mean that you're just going to make a metallic bird. No, but you just take the important aspects from your reference point and you start being creative, right? And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm not necessarily now here looking at animals, but I'm definitely having this organic versus angular design language going on, that I was thinking about how to tackle that and how to make those shapes logically follow up each other, right? There are no random shapes that stick out just in order to be cool, right? It has one major shape, this wavy form, and then I end the shape with a harsh cut that you here see at the front where I was working on. And then the rest of the vehicle has some bevels, but the top face of the vehicle has like this nice wavy form to it, as well as the wings. They are sticking out in a very fluent way that gives that a certain flow between the harshness of the vehicle, which you see, the air intakes are angular, the end of the vehicle is angular. I added some rods at the front that I was thinking of could be like batteries powering the vehicle, since it doesn't have, maybe it has like a dual engines where it's, when it is using air from the atmosphere, when the atmosphere is thick enough or consistently enough to take air for its engine, it will use the air intake that I drew out. But sometimes in an absent atmosphere, like you have almost on the moon, it could use its batteries to race. And you start to notice that I'm nerding out perhaps, but it is kind of very important to think about the function, how your aircraft or design might actually work in a different kind of environment, because that will impact the look. And if you think about it, it will definitely impact how you start to thinking about it and how you are tackling a design, right? Students often, when I give them a task to make, warm-up sketches, give yourself a function of a certain craft and give me 5 examples of quick sketches. Give me like a variety of options, because that is what we do in concept art, right? We really love making a variety of ideas and showing it in a fluent, nice, dynamic way. And there is no better way just to do it, of course, with, in my opinion, line art sketches. You can do it traditionally, you can do it on the fly, you can do it during a meeting, you can even do it on a bus if you're like, feel the spark of being motivated, do it anywhere, right? But what I often see as being a mistake is that, for example, I will get very good drawing abilities by a student, for example, and already very good fundamentals, as in good perspective, but they miss the point of trying to coming up with one function and then explore the visuals of it. Remember that we are problem solvers, right? And so what I get instead is, one helicopter, a sketch of a helicopter, sketch of a tank, a sketch of a fire truck, and a sketch of a rescue boat, Totally different things from each other. Of course, you'll end up with different designs and different looks because these are different vehicles. But what I'm looking for is give me one function with several approaches to how it might look like. That is real concept art. Nowhere in a production pipeline you'll be tasked to just make vehicles and just be free with it, Restrict yourself, and then within that restriction, open up your mind to many possible ways how to tackle a visual design. So that is the main thinking process that I really do encourage. Of course, proper reference really helps you, right? How does metal bend? How does metal actually connect to each other? Is it through wielding? Is it through bolts? Is it some other kind of technology? In this case, I imagine that, since it is sci-fi, this design is still modular. As you can see, I make those segments, but is being connected to each other in some kind of technology that is maybe, beyond wielding, but it's still modular in order to replace parts quickly. I learned that, vehicles that are exposed to the environment, like, race vehicles and for even battle vehicles like tanks, they want those pieces to be modular, easy to replace. And that is something that I also tried to fortify in this design, although on the first glance, I don't think I completely nailed it. What I try to do is the frontal part of the vehicles, you can see they are kind of exposed, and later on when I will color it, you'll see that it will be more visible. And that is another reason why I'm doing this tutorial. This is yet again another tutorial where I'm focusing also on the color and rendering to flesh out my design, right? Even though I think clear line drawing could be very useful for visual communication, in the end, it's the color that brings your design to the next level. Not only color, but at least like a value wash of your design, to make those forms pop out, to separate it from the background, give it some proper lighting so you can see how your designed materials will react to light. And now, of course, here the painting skills come in place. That is also another fundamental important skill to have as a concept designer. In my class, both with CGMA and Focal Point, I will be really focusing on the fundamentals first, right? So what is perspective? How to tackle it? How to draw any shape in perspective, right? Not by brute forcing yourself how to draw a wheel from one angle. No, I will be able to teach you how to draw any wheel from any angle, any shape from every angle, from any angle, because you just will know the rules of perspective. Same goes for painting, right? I will not teach you how to paint, for example, one particular landscape. No, it will be painting in general, because I will be focusing on what is behind the logic and the rules of lighting, shade, the bounce lights. How does color react when it's exposed to sunlight? Does it saturate? Does it desaturate? How do different materials react to lighting? You have glossy materials, matte materials. In this case, I'm giving a fast example of, a glossy metallic material. Not too reflective, but also not too matte. It's a nice balance of both. And I found out that that is the quickest way as well to showcase your design in this form. You quickly see how I'm able to give this design more form, and it actually makes it more simple. And only when I look closely to the vehicle, the details will pop up from the line drawing. Now, this is not also a complete rendering. What do I mean by a complete rendering? Complete rendering will be something that I will totally bring up to the next level, spend, for example, whole day on it. painting it, rendering it, maybe sometimes I do like a 3D model out of it and then render it out in a 3D program and then touch it up in Photoshop. What I mean by a full rendering is that I will not rely on the line drawing anymore, because everything will be visually explained through the lighting information, right? So that is a example of a full render. This is just actually a wash under beneath the layer of my line drawing. This is just enough to show what I mean with this design, right? By giving it this certain color, red and blue, I'm conveying also a certain feeling, which is again very important, because it's not only shape that dictates the emotional outcome of how you feel about a certain vehicle, but it's also color, right? What do I mean by that? Emotional feeling, right? I'm always talking about the design is logic, but in the end, you do want to have a certain feeling when you look, for example, at an Audi sports car versus a tank. You know, a tank will have angular shapes, very muscle-like forms going on, right? You can see how thick the armor plates are and how many details there are, you know, that are surrounding the plates, because it's only being focused on the function and how rough and bulky the vehicle is, right? You have that feeling that, okay, this is a sturdy vehicle. With, for example, an Audi sports car, the feeling that they want to trigger in you is, you know, aesthetics, nice status, fast, elegance, these kinds of things. And that is what I mean with emotion. And especially with this one, my emotional message was, you know, something less serious and something less deadly, you know. It is basically a craft designed for racing competitions. Of course, if I wanted to convert it to a military vehicle, then I would be able to do so, right? I would really be able to strap some guns on it, rockets, more sensors, give it a different color scheme, and then with the overall same shape, I will be still able to communicate a completely different kind of design, right? Imagine this design being like gray and green, right? So for example, the part that is now red, I'll make it gray or very dark gray, and the part that is now blue, I'll make it like dark desaturated green. Very different kind of feeling, and that is what I'm trying to send the message here, because I do realize that throughout my tutorials I've been not consistent enough how important color actually is. Some technical information about this this video. This one is sped up 4 times. You will be able to see in the description, you'll be able to get the full tutorial from it. You know, you can basically get it for the price of, you know, a coffee at Starbucks or a cookie. But there I'll go like more into detail, and you'll also get the PSD files, the PNG files, for you to completely, you know, back engineer basically what I've been doing. So yeah. Basically, what I'm also doing is, even though I treat it as a fast, you know, value sketch where I use my color, at some point I start painting a little bit on top of the line drawing. So I, you know, kind of draw on top of the line. So at some points, at some focal points where the eye leads me, the lines will be not that visible, especially on the top, since I want to keep the lines very soft at the top and more thicker on the bottom, because it really simulates the shadow. I am able to give this extra nice render feeling while not relying completely on the line drawing at some tiny areas. But overall, in real life, in real time, The rendering only took maybe 30-40 minutes. So it's a good way and it's a good balance between showcasing your concept and not spending too much time on it, right? And of course, this tutorial is to just show how creative you can get with concept art, and how there are many creative approaches to approach concept art, right? You'll be able to do this same design, perhaps even by photo bashing and just adjusting it, or doing it in 3D and then do some Photoshop on top of it. The main message is that fundamental skills are still important, and what I'm finding out is that it's sometimes being mistaken that the pretty picture is sometimes more important than the actual design, where it is the other way around actually. I think a successful concept artist should be able to extract forms and be able to be presented with a certain set of materials from the real world, and be able to creatively work with that and be able to make his or her own designs out of it. The pretty picture comes later, you'll always have time for that. Often a concept artist also is being tasked as an illustrator to make like a key art or some kind of final presentation of your concept, and that happens. But the most fun part for me is designing, which is was initial the first couple of minutes while I was like scribbling the design. That part only took maybe 10 to 15 minutes in the real time. And for me, that scribbling sketch, for me, it presents already enough information, right? I make those suggestive details, I make those scribbles, I remember what I want to design there if I will spend more time on it like I'm doing now. But I will be able to just move on to the next sketch and make maybe 20 to 30 sketches like that per day. And then out of that, you develop a certain design language. I really do encourage to do the same, and that is also what I've been doing at CGMA, but more so when I'll be teaching on a physical school at Focal Point, because there we actually put you through the tears, sweat, and blood to really draw consistently. And those demands will have to be met, because there's only one way to improve, right? And that is to draw consistently, but also knowing how to study concept art, the drawing skills, the fundamentals, the perspective efficiently, right? There are always some points that you have to tackle as a concept artist when it comes to drawing. Think first about the big shapes rather than the detailed shapes, even though they're as important in my opinion, because the complexity of the design will dictate how believable and rich it is. But don't try to save a failed design with its main shape with overcomplicated details, right? And that is a balance that you can seek out through time, and not only like through time by doing nothing, but by actually efficiently learning. And of course, nothing is a guarantee in life, but when you start doing concept art, when you start doing sketches, studies of real life vehicles, you do increase your chances, and that is the thing, right? By doing nothing, you will not become anything, right? So yeah, and in the end, you don't want to do concept art just to have an easy life and because you love video games and you wish for a chance to work at a AAA studio, right? That is not why I started doing concept art. Well, it's one of the reasons, of course, because it's nice, but the main reason is because I really genuinely love it, right? There is nothing more exciting for me just to sit down, have nothing else to do. I paid all my bills, I did all my formalities, I did all the bullshit that I had to deal with throughout the day, and I can just sit, relax, and just think about design, right? What will be a next successful vehicle I can design, or a piece of architecture or scene? it's something that I've been doing since my childhood, and it just never gets boring because every time there are some other topics to tackle, right? And yeah, in this case, I was researching, what kind of aircraft, how aircraft could look like, or vehicles in this situation, how certain vehicles could look like when they would be forced to, um, you know, not only being made for one planet, but for example, a set of planets or a set of a planet and its moons, because every planet is different when it comes to gravitation, the composition of the atmosphere, and so it is. So I was trying to impact that, with this vehicle. As you can see, it has some air intake, so it is communicating to us that it also can fly through an atmosphere, or more hover. I was thinking more of like a hovercraft, through an atmosphere that has some atmospheric components that can be used to, burn fuel. But I also put these giant frontal batteries, or perhaps even nuclear rods, in, or fusion cells in the front of the vehicles, you can see, which are modular. Those gray parts that I was rendering out, they are now much visible after I added the color, as you can see. And that fortifies the fact that, maybe the vehicle has two types of power sources, two types of engines, right? And that is actually an idea that is kind of realistic. It is very expensive to do, of course, but it's realistic, right? Even submarines from the Second World War had two types of engines, right? Because underwater they cannot take in the air for their diesel engine. Every fossil fuel engine needs air to, to make that reaction inside of the cylinders. And underwater they used an electric motor, very slow, but the diesel engine, when it was on the surface, it was charging up the electric motor, and once that was charged, it was able to go underwater and be there for a while. I don't know the exact details, you can all look it up. And that's the beauty, of course, of the age that we live in now. There's no excuse for not knowing things. Everything is really easily accessible and available through information like this, but also concept art alone. I am trying to, for example, share my knowledge through a variety of channels, and I'm not the only one, right? There are many sources that you can teach how to do concept art. So yeah, I would like to thank you guys for watching. I hope that this was insightful. Let me guys know in the comment section if you would want to see something more like that, or perhaps something else. I really want to stay interactive with you guys, what we do next. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I hope to see you guys next time very, very soon. Bye bye.